Hello, Oracles. We've got a big week this week when it comes to Tesla stock itself and the entire market. And the entire market could potentially affect what happens with Tesla stock. So, today we're going to just discuss some of the things that we're going to be expecting for the second half of this week. That's when all the exciting things are going to be going down, what some of the expectations are, and what we can see going forward after that. So we'll take a look at CPI, PPI, the FOMC meeting that is going on. We've got the annual shareholder meeting going on. Lots of goodies. We're going to dive right into it. If you guys enjoy this type of content, please hit that like button down below and we'll get right into it. All right, so to get right into things first, we're going to go right into the CPI. We are going to be getting this tomorrow morning. So the year-over-year expectations is 3.4%. It's the same thing we got last month at 3.4%. This is a good sign because the first few months of this year, we did see that climbing up. So hopefully we're going to either level off or start to come back down again. Now, on a month-over-month basis, we are looking for a 0.1%. Now, this is definitely coming down from the 0.3% we got last month. Now, one of the things that we have noticed in the market and when it comes to earning reports is the fact that many retailers such as McDonald's, Target, Walmart, all these companies are starting to come down on their prices. This is a deflationary sign that potentially we might see a lot less inflation than we thought. Now going over to what the European banks were doing, they ended up cutting interest rates by 25 basis points. And based upon their criteria, we have actually been at 2% inflation for the last 9 months. If that is the case, we might actually have a lot lower inflation than we think, and the Fed keeping rates higher for longer could actually be detrimental. So we've got Elizabeth Warren coming out urging the Fed to cut rates tomorrow. I don't know if they're actually going to or not. The market right now is not pricing that in. We'll get into that more in a minute. But looking at inflation, if we're at a 0.1%, that could be a very strong sign that the Fed might be cutting rates a lot sooner than people have been expecting. So beginning of the year, we expected a lot of rate cuts. As the year went on, we saw inflation going up. Those rate cuts got pushed down the road. And now all of a sudden, we're starting to get to the point where those rate cuts might actually start happening sooner, potentially. And now looking at core inflation, this is now starting to balance off a little bit more when it comes to the headline number. There was a while there where the core inflation was a lot stickier than the headline inflation. Now it's starting to balance off. So the forecast being 3.5%, whereas the headline number is at a 3.4% for a forecast. And core inflation on a month-over-month basis is forecast to be at a 0.3%. So that is still higher than that 0.1%, but we still see it stable and hopefully it can stay at that rate or come down. But again, if it starts to come down further, that could be an indicator that the Fed has held higher for longer too long, and we might end up getting deflationary pressures, which is not good for small and medium businesses. So now we also have the PPI that is going to be coming out on Thursday. That's the same day as the annual shareholder meeting. I don't think that's going to factor in anywhere near as much as tomorrow, because tomorrow we have the CPI in the morning, then we're going to have the FOMC decision in the afternoon. So when we end up getting those two things, what happens with PPI is probably going to get overshadowed significantly by what is going on with the CPI and the FOMC meeting. Now, as I said, we are expecting to see no rate cuts from Jerome Powell at all tomorrow. We're expecting them to be holding these rates. But what the market is going to want to hear is, how do they feel about the CPI data? I mean, we're getting the data in the morning, and we're going to be getting the Fed's reaction to that data in the afternoon. It has really not happened. I don't remember the last time that has happened. I know at one point we got CPI the day before, and then we got the FOMC, the meeting the day after, or the FOMC meeting and then CPI the day after. And we know that the Fed is going to get those numbers ahead of time to be able to make a decision based upon those numbers before the release to the public. Now, of course, you can also argue the fact that these numbers may not even be accurate to begin with. Again, the European banks use a different way to calculate inflation, and it seems to be a bit more accurate. We also know that the government and the Fed numbers that we had gotten when it comes to CPI have been adjusted so significantly in the past. Can we even trust these numbers? Either way, the market's going to react one way or another based off of these. And what I try to do is look through all of that data and not go by market reaction as to what I think is going to happen, but truly look at the data. And this is why I'm starting to see those cracks in the entire economy of small and medium businesses are starting to struggle. These are the companies who having to pay 9, 10% interest rates on the loans that they're taking to keep their business going keeping those going for longer, if we now get to a deflationary economy, these small businesses are no longer going to have that pricing power to compete with the big dogs that are out there. If they cannot compete, they're not going to be able to lower their prices because they need to pay off those loans. That means that they're going to either go bankrupt or get swallowed up by the bigger companies. This is where we're going to see a lot of unemployment happen. Buyouts go on. When buyouts happen, you see a lot of people getting laid off. When people go bankrupt, obviously, people are going to get laid off from this. This is going to be an issue, and I think we're going to start seeing that happening in the next 6, 9, 12 months. Whether we're going to make it through the election before that happens or not, I still don't know. The economy and the market still seem strong on the surface, but there's a lot of underlying things that are going on that are starting to crack. That could be very concerning. Now, when it comes to Tesla itself, we are going to be getting the annual shareholder meeting on Thursday. So now we're going to have the CPI, the FOMC meeting, and PPI all coming out before the annual shareholder meeting. We've seen it in the past that the macro environment is stronger than Tesla. So if something major happens one way or the other, Tesla could be affected by that as well. If we get very bullish information out of CPI and the FOMC meeting, and we get positive news coming out of the annual shareholder meeting, we could see a massive run in Tesla stock. Conversely, if we get bad CPI, bad FOMC meeting, bad news coming out from the Fed, and they're kind of bearish, and we get not so good information from the Tesla meeting, we could end up seeing some very ugly things going on. So again, I'm not here to predict anything. I'm just trying to share with you guys the potentials of what could happen one way or the other. So positives that we could get from the FOMC meeting are maybe the Fed does come out and cut rates 25 basis points. If we get that tomorrow, that could be a very bullish sign of the Fed saying, hey, we've recognized that inflation is coming down. We've noticed that unemployment is, starting to maybe tick up a little bit, despite the fact that we got a hot jobs number last Friday. That hot jobs number involved a lot of part-time employees coming in and a lot of full-time employees stepping down. That's not really what you want to see. So while the number itself looked good, again, the underlying data that came out, not as good as you want it to be. So if the Fed recognizes this and decides to cut rates tomorrow by 25 basis points, that could be a very bullish sign of the market saying, all right, we recognize that we're starting to get a little hot. We need to make sure that we're bringing in this plane for the soft landing, and we're starting to bring it down now. If the Fed waits till we actually do crack and has to drop interest rates significantly quickly, that's going to be bearish. So a 25 basis point hike tomorrow could be bullish, but chances are we're not going to get that. So as long as the Fed speak tomorrow is in that manner of we're seeing things going in the direction we want to see them, that's going to be just kind of a neutral, not super bullish, but the market will probably continue to go on this bullish run that we've been on. Now, CPI, again, if we meet numbers that come out that the forecast is 3.4% headline, 0.1% forecast for month over month. If we get those numbers, again, same thing is good. If we actually get a negative number when it comes to month over month, that could actually scare the market because that could give us the indication of deflationary pressures coming in. I think even if we get a 0.2% month over month, we'd be safe. That's down from the 0.3% last month. And even if it's not at the 0.1%, not a huge deal. So somewhere in that ballpark, I think we will be safe. Now, if we come in at a 0.4% or higher, I think it could get ugly again because that could mean that the Fed is going to stay higher for longer. And that's just one of those situations where we know that the jobs market isn't as good as it's going to be. Higher for longer, detrimental to small businesses and medium businesses, could not be good. So again, just a couple of ways that they could play out tomorrow. Now, let's get into the fun stuff in the annual shareholder meeting. So I was trying to bring it up for you guys on here, but again, me getting back into things, there's some, I couldn't get X to even come up on my laptop. I've got to figure that out. But Curious Peggy had out there his predictions for what he thinks are going to potentially play out from the annual shareholder meeting and how Tesla stock is going to move. And Peggy, if you're watching this, I apologize if I don't get it right because I'm trying to do this from memory. But his scenarios were, it's based on really the two big votes that we have going on for the annual shareholder meeting. One obviously is Elon's compensation package, and the other one is the move to Texas. Me personally, I don't know why anybody would be against the move to Texas, so I think that's a given, but we'll play out scenarios just in case it is not. So Peggy's thoughts were if we get Elon's compensation package gets passed and they move to Texas, plus 10% in the stock. If we get Elon's compensation passed and it fails moving to Texas, maybe a 3 to 5% bump. And I do agree because I think that Elon's compensation package weighs more heavily than the move down to Texas. Now we'll get into some of those logistics behind moving to Texas in a minute. But scenario 3 is we are going to Elon's compensation package does not get passed, but Texas does. So if that ends up happening, I think he had like a minus 5% move in the stock price. If both of them fail, we could see a drop of 10 to 15% in the stock price. Now, again, I think all of these numbers could be magnified based upon what we get from the CPI and the FOMC meeting tomorrow. Because again, if it just stays even keel, normal as is, I think Peggy's predictions are pretty accurate. However, if we see something very bullish in the FOMC meeting and the CPI, we could see even higher numbers. Maybe we bust up and break over $200 in the stock. Could be happening. We've already seen Apple this past week push up over $200 themselves. Maybe Tesla follows suit. Now, if we end up going in the other direction and we get very bearish stuff going on with CPI and the FOMC meeting, and we get negative stuff from the annual shareholder meeting, we might drop back down below $150 and potentially further. So again, very big swings that could happen in either direction, but I think we have that potential of it going. Plus, right now when it comes to the charts, we are looking at a very strong long-term wedge pattern that is coming down, priming with the timing just right to be breaking out or breaking down at the annual shareholder meeting. Now, of course, as I just stated, we could be seeing that happening one way or the other. We could have a very big move one way or the other in the stock on Thursday. You guys can let us know your thoughts in the comments below, which way you think it's going to move, what you think is going to end up moving the stock price itself. Is it going to be CPI, FOMC meeting, annual shareholder meeting, all of the above? Let us know in the comments below. Now, I did want to touch on one thing when it comes to the move to Texas. A big piece of what's going on with the move to Texas that I'm actually focused on and most excited about is the fact that that move down to Texas is actually going to be great for their bottom line because they pay a lot of taxes over in California. The taxes they're going to have to pay in Texas significantly less. Now, as big as the company is getting, that may not hit the bottom line that hard, but it will be noticeable on the bottom line because of that money that they're not going to have to pay in all of those taxes. Now, the other piece that could potentially hit the bottom line again is Elon's compensation package. Now, that does get paid out in stock, but when that gets paid out in stock, that is going to end up coming off of the bottom line. So me personally, I think he deserves it. I think he should get that. I voted for him to get this. So again, you guys should your thoughts in the comments the other day, and pretty much all of you voted yes for it. And I agree with all of you guys that I think he should get this. He set out to achieve the impossible, and he achieved the impossible. There are some people who are just very sour about the situation because for the last few years, the stock hasn't gone anywhere. And when the stock doesn't go anywhere or it goes down, people naturally want to point fingers and point blame at someone. The person you're going to blame the most is going to be the guy in charge of the company. And when he looks like he's losing focus because he's focused on X, or he's posting political tweets or other things about being woke and, really just kind of, doing things a lot of people don't like, they're going to point fingers at that. I guarantee if the stock price was up over at all-time highs right now, nobody would give a crap about anything that he is saying or tweeting or X or any of that. That's just the reality of it. Now, some people may have their opinions on that still, but they're really not going to care, and nobody's going to be trying to point fingers and point blame as to why the stock price is down. Realistically, we're down. We're just in a down cycle for the stock. They're in that transition period where they're moving into the next growth phase. Just the reality of where we're at. We might be here for another 12 to 24 months, until we get the compact car up and running, until we get FSD regulated, until we get the robo-taxis on the road, until Cybertruck gets itself to volume production. We could be in a suppressed environment. Maybe we'll get some pops and some swings like we'll probably see from the annual shareholder meeting, maybe from the robo-taxi unveil coming in August, but that's just the reality of the situation. That's where we're at right now. We will cycle back up. So anybody who was going to vote no for Elon's compensation package because of how the stock has moved over the last 3 years and not recognize what happened since 2018, that's a shame because you really should be focusing on what has happened since then. And you should also be focusing long term because just because we're down now does not mean we are going to stay down. Because if you think that we're going to stay down, why are you still a shareholder? Just throwing it out there. Because if you think the stock is down and it's never coming back up and it's never going to go higher again to all-time highs, sell the damn stock. You shouldn't own it, really. So honestly, these people who are angry and wanting to vote against it because the stock price has been down for 3 years are not true investors, because if they wait long enough, it will go higher and it will all pay out. And a lot of that is due to Elon running the company the way he did. And he always touts his entire team for all the hard work that they have done, but it is because of him driving the entire company forward as he did that we're at this point. So that's my personal feelings on all of that. And again, you guys, I appreciate all of your opinions and how you feel about it all. And I think you're right. I do have to state that by stepping away from YouTube as I did, I kind of stepped away from the whole entire Tesla community, really opened my eyes. And I found that, I don't like to call it a cult, and some people do. It's just, there's some people who are very passionate about the company, about Elon, about what Tesla is doing. And I think that's awesome. But there's a lot of things that many people that are in there are, they're looking long term, and they're kind of blind to what's happening currently in the reality of what's transpiring with Tesla and Elon, and they're overlooking a lot of that for the future prospects. Nothing wrong with that, but they're ignoring a lot of what's happening. And by stepping out, I was able to see a lot of this, and it really kind of gave me a much more balanced view as to what's going on. This is why I sold out a significant piece of my position for now, because I recognized that and I had different personal goals that I wanted to attend to. I'm working on those with the full intention of getting back in. So far, it's been playing out well because I sold at 260 and we're now sitting at around 170-ish. So I made myself some good money on this, and I'm just waiting. I'm not trying to time this. I don't know. I'm just getting my ducks in a row for what I need to take care of. And then I can start investing some money back in as I get that cash flow coming in from my real estate and my dividends. That's the way I'm playing it, but I still see very awesome things going on for Tesla in the long term. All right. So that was my rant. That was my tirade. Thank you for listening to that. But otherwise, that's what's going on this week. So for me, I've got my family in town for my son's graduation this Friday. If I can, I'm going to try and get out here and do a video on Thursday for the annual shareholder meeting. And then this way we can kind of discuss what's going on. And by then we should hopefully have some reactions as to what happened with the stock and what's going on with the votes for everything. So otherwise, that's what I think we have going on this week. That's the exciting stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate all of your support. Have a great one.